in a with a website called Replit.com. If you didn't, it's not a big deal. It will take you about 2.5 seconds. I'm gonna paste. I'm sorry. I'm gonna paste the website within the chat. You can just go there real quick, and you can log in with one of these websites. I'm pretty sure everybody either has Facebook or Instagram or GitHub or Google. If you don't have a GitHub, it's a super important thing. I was talking to a master's student today, and he said he did not have a GitHub, and it's kind of like the way we present our work to the world, and it's also the way we co-work with other developers. So I definitely suggest getting a GitHub account. Once you log in to Replit.com with your account, just let me know when you're at this screen. I don't want to move forward without anybody else. So if you can give me like a thumbs up inside the chat or just anything, that'd be cool, just so I don't move forward. Okay, good to go, good to go. All right. So now that we're on the screen, we see that we have this create prompt right here. You could do different languages. I do Python and Node, but I'm going to create a Node.js environment, and I will name it coding club. Yeah. And then today's date, which is 3/30/2022. Yeah. And I'm gonna make it a public, yeah. And that's all. So this is creating a Node.js environment, which I will start talking about right now. Node.js is a runtime compiler basically for JavaScript. Originally, JavaScript was made just to run in the browser, and it does have a lot of packages that have to do with web development, but I think starting in 2008, I think, someone created a runtime environment within C++, and
yo, I'm taking this club class. Hold on. You taking a class right now? Yeah, no, it's a club. Basically, it's not a class.
And in this environment, we can run JavaScript. So now we have this environment in front of us, an index.js file, which, like our index.html file, it states that we're in the root of our project. This is the only file within our project because we can see with our file explorer to the left of us. And to the right, we have a console, right? Now, if you've written any other languages like Python or Java or C++, there's always a way to write a line to the console. And it's really important that we understand that this really is nothing but a way to check our work. It's like a visual representation of what we're coding. And the way that we do that in JavaScript is that we do a console.log. All right. We have a couple of different options with console. We can do console.error. But console.log is also, it's kind of like a neutral version of writing to the console, right? And console.log takes a lot of different data types, right? And we're going to go over some of the data types in a second, but I first want to understand a way that we can have some type of visual representation of what we're doing. I just want to be coding without us seeing anything happen. It's kind of hard when we think about it like that, if we're just writing code and we don't understand what it does or how it works. And that's why the console log really comes in handy for these types of operations. So let's start going over some of the data types that we find in JavaScript. All right. And some of them are really, really basic. We call them primitive data types. And the first one we have is a string. All right. And, we can do a classic hello world and press this play button and we'll print it out to the console. And the way that we know that this is a string is that it's encapsulated between these two quotation marks. They could be double quotation marks. They could be single quotation marks. It runs the same. Oh, hello class. Hello class. Cool. The next type of data type that we have in JavaScript, they're numbers, right? And I know in most languages we have separate like integer and float types. In JavaScript, we just have the number type, which encapsulates both. So we can just write a simple number to the console, and it prints it out. We notice that it prints out differently than it does a string. I'm going to turn this number into a string by encapsulating within quotation marks, and it'll be printed out in a white type of color. That's because this is not the same as this. One is a string data type, and one is a number data type. All right. Okay. We also have booleans. All right. A boolean is a true or false value. All right, and that's denoted by true type or false. Lowercase. And true or false is printed also to the console. Very, very basic. We're doing very basic data types right now. And then we also have an undefined data type and a null data type. I'm just going to print out null to the console. A null means nothing is there, that it's blank. We can say that, before something's initialized, it's null. It means it has no value, right? We also have some non-primitive data types as like collections, So let's say I had a bunch of numbers, right? I had a bunch of numbers. Like I had my transactions for a week, like my bank transactions for a week, right? That might be 10 numbers, 12 numbers, 15 numbers. And the way that we collect these numbers is in an array. And the way that we state that we have an array within JavaScript is with these two brackets, right? And then we denote our values, which can be numbers, strings, they can be whatever they want. And then we just type in our values separated by commas, right? Okay. Now, all of these all of these data types are considered objects within JavaScript, and they all have methods that go along with them. And we'll have to learn them kind of along the way because it's kind of a lot of time to spend on individual methods, and you only have to really know them when you kind of need them. So we'll go over them. I'll post a reference sheet within the within our Discord, but we will use them here and there, and you'll have to learn them along the way. Okay, now let's say I wanted to reference like I kept using the number 45 over and over again, and I don't want to keep typing it. In JavaScript, we can create something called a variable. And a variable, specifically in JavaScript, we have three different types of variables. And the way that we denote the syntax for these variables is that we place the syntax term in front of the name of the variable and then assign it to the variable itself. And now that's kind of like a lot of, it's a lot to say. So I'll just type it out for you and we'll see, everything. So let's say I wanted to put my name into a program, right? I will save it. I would save my name to a variable, probably called name, right? And the way I would do that is I would use the syntax for a variable, which is var. Then I would say name. And then I would use the equal sign to assign name to my name. Okay. What's important is that now that this variable is assigned and within the scope of our project, we don't need to restate it to change it. So we can just say name, and I'm just gonna pick a student, Sabrina, and now if I console log name, it would be Sabrina. Let's get that out of the way. Because the variable has been reassigned. All right. Super easy, super simple. We also have two other types of variables that we can assign in JavaScript. We have a const and we have let. Okay. Now, the real reason that we use const and let more than var nowadays is that const and let kind of signify two different things within a JavaScript program. So I'm going to give the name variable a const a prefix, all right? But I'm going to create a let last name variable, okay? And the reason I'm doing this is that more often than not, I mean, unless you change your first name, no, we don't need semicolons, which is actually the great part. JavaScript gets read and then compiled. So it knows where your end of your statements are. We don't need semicolons. It is good practice, though, to put them in just so that it's easier for people to read. And I'm sorry that I didn't do that, but they're not required. But it is good practice to do. The reason that I put let into last name is that I want first of all, we'll talk about const. Const stands for constant, and more likely than not, you're not going to change your first name. Now, let's say you get married, you're more likely to change your last name. So that's why I assigned a let prefix to this last name variable, so that, I mean, you could reassign both, but when the best practice is to only set global constants to consts and to set variables that can change to let. All right, it's not really something you got to really memorize. You can use all three interchangeably. You can use var, you can use const, you can use let. Doesn't matter as long as you're assigning. You understand that you're assigning variables when you use these keywords. All right. So now that we understand that, let's go back to my little thing. Okay. Now that we understand the variable keywords, right? We can start assigning, we can start doing some comparison and to see if two values are the same, right? And the way that we do that is with the comparison operators. And we have a couple of them. And while I'm doing this, I also will be going over the math operators as well. It's very similar, but they're not the same. So I'm going to create a variable up here with my age, right? I'm just gonna say my age, and we notice that I'm writing in kind of a weird way where I lowercase the first and then uppercase the second word. This is called camel case. It is best practice in JavaScript specifically to write like this, like the way that we write in all lowercase in Python. But again, this doesn't mean anything. It won't affect the way your program runs. It's just a really good practice to get into when writing code. It's just, the way that JavaScript developers have gotten accustomed to doing it. All right. So I'm gonna put my age equal to 29, and then I want to check. I want to check if my age is 29. I know this seems kind of dumb because I just wrote it up there. So I'm gonna do a console.log of my age, and then I'm gonna do a double equal signs. All right. Exactly, Mario. This double equal signs is asking, it's not setting. When we use a single equal signs up here, we're setting my age to 29. Now, when we use double equal signs, we're asking, is my age 29? And we'll see it prints out true to the console because my age is 29. But if I said my age is 28, it would print out false to the console because obviously my age is not 28. So we have a couple different operators that we can use to see if two numbers are equal to or not equal to. So we also can do greater than and less than. We can also throw greater than and less than equal to. So this includes the number into it. So obviously my age is greater than 28. And if we do the other way around, my age is not, greater or less than 28. Okay. So these are really good when we're using, we're trying to check for statements in the future. We can also use some of these statements with strings as well. So let's create a constant of my name and equal to a string of Joshua, right? And I'm going to say my name, Joshua. And it comes out true. And a lot of coding languages, we can't actually compare strings, but thankfully in JavaScript, we have the ability to do this. It makes it really simple and easy to really check through different objects based on comparison. So we have strings, we have numbers, we have booleans, we also have a date. We have a date object. Let's say today equal new date. Don't get too hung up on all this if you don't understand what this is. I'm just going to print this out. That's a good question. Nope, we won't. And the way that we get around this, Mario, is that when we're comparing strings and we don't know two objects, a string has methods attached to it, like I was talking to before. They're functions that are pre-written that are attached to the string object. And we can say to lowercase and now it's true. And if we didn't know what we were comparing to, we would also put this to two lowercase. This way we know that both strings are lowercase, and now that we can equally compare them. Because sometimes when we're writing code, we have hundreds of records we have to go through to check. So we obviously won't know what the cases are. So we want to give the best situation for them to match or not match. Okay. So now let's build out a little program. And let's call it our bank. Let's think of it as our bank. I want to record all the transactions within a bank, within my banking, all my banking transactions, right? And I'm just gonna call this money spent, and I'm gonna set this equal to an empty array, right? I don't know if I can console log this specifically. Perfect. You actually can in JavaScript. Cool. So I have an empty array with my transactions, right? Now, technically in JavaScript, you can put anything you want into an array. In most other languages, you cannot mix different data types, and that's a good practice just to think of. I'll get to that in a second, Mary. I'm sorry about that. That's a good practice to think of, right? When dealing with arrays, we only really want to put one data type into this array. So we're going to add some items into our array, and the way that we do that is with a push method that's attached to the array. So we type in money spent, we say push dot push, and dot the dot operator signifies we are accessing a method that's stored within this object. All right, so like I said, all these objects have methods that are attached to them, and we're accessing it with this dot operator. All right, so we're going to push some numbers onto the back of that array. I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times and change the numbers a bit. And I'm just going to console log money spent. Cool. So now we have these numbers, right? But what if I don't want all the transactions? What if I just want the first transaction? Does anybody know how we would do that? How we would access the first transaction? It's kind of similar to other programming languages. So yeah, exactly, Mario. So we're going to use something called box notation. So what we're saying here is that we want the 0 index. So when we count in programming for the majority of the time, we start as 0. So 0 is considered 1. I know it's kind of confusing, but if you just get past that, and just accept it, that's all I really can tell you. That's what we accept as 1 in programming. All right. So if I'm accessing the first index in this array, does anybody know what that value is going to be? Yep, 14. I'm going to run this, and we're going to get a 14. All right. Now, what if, I've realized, or the bank realized, they forgot to charge, I don't know. So it only prints when it's empty. Yeah, exactly. It was printing the array, but the array was empty, so there was nothing to print. So it was just going to print, whatever it could. And when I print the whole array, we still have the brackets, but it's with the array contents within it. Cool. Now, let's say I wanted to update, like, let's say my bank made a mistake on one of the payments, one of the transactions, and it wasn't $17, it was $18. So all it needs to do is access the array, right? And set that value to whatever it was, +1 or +2, whatever the correction is. Does anybody have an idea of what way we can do that? I'm just gonna put the console.log down here. It's nothing to do with this console.log, so. So I would use the box operator. I would find the number that I need to be at. So 0, 1, right? This is number 1. And then I can set that equal to this number, right? What this number is, +2, +3, right? We'll make it even 20. And now we have updated the value within money spent, right? And the way we do that is with basic arithmetic, So I can do, plus, I could do minus. So remember, we're minusing from 17 here, not 20. I can do division. And I can do multiplication. Right? Does everybody get what I'm saying right now? I know it's kind of a lot of information, but yeah, but we don't have a float operator in JavaScript. We only have number, which contains float and integer. It's kind of nifty. I don't really see the need for a specific float. I mean, it is nice, but we don't need to use it in JavaScript. So we have a way to access every now we have a way to access our integer array indexes, and we can update them with this math operator right here. And like I said, we have plus, minus, division and multiplication. We also have one more. It's called modulus, which divides the first number by the second number, and it returns the remainder. So I'm just gonna do that real quick. So if I'm just gonna do the math real quick. So 50. Oh, it's 17 divided by 3 remainder 2. So 15. Yeah. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. Remainder 2. Yep. So these are all really helpful, operations to understand, to know when doing problems, which will be the kind of like the core of coding interviews, which I definitely suggest everybody does. Starts to even make an account at LeetCode or codewars.com. And I don't want to sign up. I want to log in. We can find basic arithmetic problems within Code Wars. Yeah, fundamentals, where we're going to need these type of operations, all right? So I definitely suggest trying to apply these. If you can think of, any type of homework that you could turn into, like any math homework that you have that's simple enough that you could turn into a program, that'd be a really great start, just to think about how you can use operators in a really efficient way, So let's write us. Okay, what would you say I would have to do? So let's say if I wanted to access every single index within my array, and I don't want to have to write 0 1 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. I could write something called a for loop, right? A for loop is a code block that repeats itself over and over and over again until the terms in the for loop are met. All right. Now I'm going to write it out for you, obviously. And we'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So the way that we instantiate a for loop is with a for syntax, right? Next, we're going to do a open and close parentheses, followed by a statement creating a variable, right? So we're going to say let I equal 0. And then I, which will stand for the number that we're going to be using, I is, while I is less than length, money spent dot length, which is a method. And then I'm going to say I plus plus. And then I'm going to do open and close curly brackets. All right. I know we have a lot of stuff going on here. Yes. The variable I is only in the scope of this loop. And that's called local scope. And that's why I use a let. Well, that's why I use let keyword, but it's not the specific reason. So what we're saying here is, we want to run this. We want I to be 0. We want I to be less than, sorry, wrong way. I don't need to do this either. Less than the length of the money spent array. So the money spent length will return. Let me do that first. It will return how many objects are inside of that array. So maybe it's not a function. 3. So I have 3. Sorry, I was a little mixed up with C++ or C#. The length of the array is 3. So it has 3 objects within it, right? I know that's kind of confusing because we just said we count from 0 in programming, but for this reason, we are counting from 1. So we have 1, 2, 3 objects, and we're stating in our for loop, we're starting at 0. I has to be less than the length of the array, and then I has to be updated by 1 every single time we run through this for loop block, right? So that's what plus plus means. It means add by 1, updated by 1. All right. So now we have access. So I'm just gonna really quickly console.log what this really is doing, so that we can understand what's happening here. So I'm just gonna comment out this console.log line, because I don't need this to display anymore, and I'm gonna print the for block running every single time. So every time this is running through this array, 1, 2, 3 times, it should print for me 1, 2, 3, right? Or 0, 1, 2, because we started at 0, and 0, 1, 2, and at the third time, when I is equal to 3, the block stops running. Sorry, the block will stop running because it has to be less than the length of the spent length, the money spent array. All right. And this is really helpful when we want to move through I'm just gonna console log this actually. When we want to move through an array, so we can say money spent and then I can say I, and then we can access each index individually, right? So I want to add tax to each payment, right? How would I do that? Let's assume tax is 0.08, right? Well, what would you consider outside of the array? In C++, you can print out some random number. Like if the index of like the array index is 4. But okay, so like if you go past the index of okay, yeah. So if you go past it, and that's why we wrote this this statement right here, is because I don't want to go past the index. All this is doing for me, all this loop is doing for me, really, is counting from 0 to 2. It won't warn you. It will throw an error. So let's say I want to I'm just going to comment this out for a second. And I'm going to say money spent. I want spent, and I want to index the third index. It's undefined because there's nothing there. In C++, it would probably say out of bounds. But it's the same thing. There's nothing there, and you should not try to access it unless there's an object or a set of data there. So that's the reason that we wrote this for loop like this, is that we cannot access the outside of this array because we're stating right here, I has to be less than the length of the array. That's really important to remember when writing for loops, is that this middle, each one of these statements means something. We're stating off where we're starting, we're stating off where we're ending, and we're stating off, what's going to happen every time we go through the array. All right. And now I want to update every index by 0.8. I want to multiply it by 0.8. So what operator would I use for that? Exactly. So now I'm gonna teach you a little trick, because programming is all about being lazy. So if we don't want to rewrite, I could do this, and then I would have to set it equal to this because I'm multiplying this number by 0.08, and then I'm going to set the number to that. I also can do this. Right? So what this is saying is multiply by 0.8 and then set this number to that number, to the new returned value. So I'm going to run this real quick. There we go. It's 1.8 because you have to take the value of itself. But now this is all these values. These are all these values with tax attached, right? So we've learned how to write a for loop. We've learned about arrays. We've learned about string and number data types, and we've also learned about comparison data types for booleans and boolean data types as well. Okay. So let's try to do a joint project right now. Let's try to solve a problem that's really simple on Code Wars. Let's see. This is a little too easy, I think. Okay, I'm gonna create my own problem for you guys. Let's say I have an array, or actually I have a bunch of variables, right? And they're gonna spell out my name. How would I get this all to print nicely in the console? We could be creative about this. We don't have to be creative about this. I'm just gonna stop with H because it's kind of a pain in the neck. So how would I get these into like a collection, maybe, or like any type of way that I can get these printed just vertically instead of like this? Exactly. So how do I create an array, Mario? Okay. So it's the exact same way we create a variable. Super easy. We'll just say var name array, and we'll set it to an empty array like this. Okay. Now, if I console.log name array, we have a whole bunch of nothing. So how do I add them to this array? Yeah, we have to use a function. Yep. It's append in Python, but in push, we have two array methods that you really should know. Push, which pushes on something to the back of the end of the array, and then we also have pop, which removes the last element from the array. Sorry, 1 second. So we have push and we have pop, all right? So I'm going to use push to add the variables of my name to my name array, right? So I'm going to say name array. How do I call a method on this name array? What type of syntax? That might be a weird question. What up? Yeah, dot push. And we have a parentheses behind this, this method, well, this syntax, which lets us know that this is a method, not a property. So when we see dot push like that, I mean, you shouldn't name anything push, but this would be a property, and this is a method, right? And so we want to add the J to our name array. I'm going to do this a couple of times. It's a good question. I don't think you can. You know what? Let's just try it. Let's see what happens. Oh, yeah, you can. Look at that. That's pretty awesome. You learn something new every day. Yeah, so you can push multiple items apparently with commas and setting each one to a different parameter. This should be type of. Oh yeah, look. Push items. New elements at the end of the array and returns a new length of the array. Cool. So now I have my name inside of an array. What if I wanted to iterate through these one by one and print each one to the console? Yep, the for loop. And Mario, can you walk me through the for loop? I'll give you what goes in each place. The first for I equals 0. The second part states how far we can go. So what we're saying here is that we want to go less than the name array, but what we really should be doing is less than the length of the name array. And we see that this is not a method. Even though in a lot of coding languages it is a method, this is a property attached to the name array, right? And then finally, I'm just going to say I plus plus. And then I will console log I. So you know what? No, name array I. So I'm just going to comment that out. And now I have Josh printed vertically. Now
Does anybody know? Oh, wait, okay. What's your question? You know, I've never used it in the second way before. I will have to look that up and get back to you. You know, or we can try it right now, actually. Console log that 1 plus plus. Let's see if that prints out property. I honestly have never seen it. I've never seen this before. We can try it. So apparently it's the same exact thing. Seems to run exactly the same. I can look it up and I'll let you know. If I wanted to print my name out backwards, does anybody know how we would do that? Yeah. Oh wait, you know, I have to actually change some things about this array. Since we're starting at 0, we have to change this array a little bit as well. So we got undefined because, like we noticed before, you cannot access things that are not there. So why did this code not work? Oh, start at a different index like 3. Yeah. So we can start at 3, but also we can just start at what? Yeah. Exactly. So we're going to set this to the length. And it might have to be the length minus 1 because the length is 3. And they're only 0, 1, 2 positions right now. Yeah, so we're going to do the 1 is equal to length minus 1. And then the next statement here sets when we're going to end. So, yep, exactly. Cool. Let's try that again. My ref was stop working. That's 1. While I is greater than 0. Greater than or equal to 0. Oh yeah, he's 3. What's going on here? Minus 0. Why am I getting 3 on? Seems to only be. Let's clear this real quick. Okay, I don't know. It was a glitch within the replit. So yeah. So now we're printing my name backwards. All right. Finally, we have a couple more minutes. I'm just going to show you one last thing that we can do with strings. We can set a empty string right here, right? Or we'll use an empty. Let's call it let name with empty string, right? I could have said name plus equals this, and then I'll just console log. You have to enter this. It's backwards, but you get the deal. Strings are in strings we can actually use some of the operators that we use for math as well. It's very limited, but it's a real nifty way to combine strings if we want to concatenate them with other strings. It's just kind of a nifty way to get around some of the older style programming rules. I mean, it was really strict about data types, and JavaScript's a little bit looser, and that's good and it's also bad, but we have to be careful when we're using JavaScript to make sure that we don't mix up, let's say, a number with an integer, because then we'll get, well, it converts this to a string, but they're not equal. Like one is not a string, is a number. So we just have to be really careful that we don't allow JavaScript's, laxness. Like it's real chill about all this stuff, but we can't let it mess up our code. So we have to be very careful about what we put we have to be really careful about our data types. Okay. We're gonna probably talk about, let me see where we are within. Okay, I just want to talk about one last data type. Is an object data type, otherwise known as a dictionary. In like Python or C#, I think C++ might call it a dictionary as well. It just has key value pairs, and this becomes really helpful when creating just complex objects. So let's say student is equal to, and notice I'm using my curly brackets, all right? And we have different parameters that are associated with this student. Sorry. All right. Now, this is really good to know for when we're building out, like I said, complex objects, models of things. We want this student variable, right, to contain different sets of data that we can easily access. And we do that with key value pairs. So we can see that on the left, I have my key, and on the right, I have my value. And these values could be anything. They can be a mixture of numbers and strings. They can be other objects that are nested within it. All right, have a good class. These are really going to be key for building out really more complex objects in the future. Probably next class we'll probably get into something called classes, which are a way to create objects in more of like a methodical way, where we can just blueprint out an object and create them instantaneously. Does anyone have any questions about this object data type? And like I said, these can contain a bunch of other data types within it. Transactions, and this could be an array. And let's say if I wanted to transactions, empty array, and I can access that push method like we did before, and I can put 15, 16, 18. And it becomes a really dynamic, thing in our toolkit. We can definitely use this a lot in the future, and we should definitely look to use these objects when we come to like really difficult coding problems that will be containing a lot of different types of data that we can need to access. So we can talk about like the transactional cost of using some of these data types, right? When so when we use an object, we have an O of 1 transaction cost, which means it's pretty much like we're finding the perfect index, and we're grabbing that key, and it's a very quick operation. All right, compare it to arrays where we need to move through an array to find where we need to be. Yes, if we have the index of the array, we can find exactly where we need to go. But to find objects within the array, we need to search with a for loop to find the object, right? But if I'm looking specifically for the major, and I know that the major exists, all I have to do is say dot major, and it'll print out dot major for me. So we should try to use these a little more complex data types, such as arrays and students, not interchangeably, but just with a little bit of care when we're coding towards our problems. So I'm kind of running out of time. I gotta get back to work. Like I said, go onto this website. Find a problem that is in the 8KYU section. That's the easiest section. You can find solutions. Oh, Mario, you want to share some code? Go ahead. I got time for that.
Okay. I only got like 2 not project assignments
Okay.
that I did with the software engineering bootcamp.
Nice, man.
So this one, and I want to get some advice on all these if statements, because I don't like all these if statements. I
Yeah.
don't like using them too much, but it's just simple. So we have like it asks you for 4 inputs,
Okay.
and it tells you like this is just like ordering some pizza. So let's say something like pan, and then a large, and then rush shipping or delivery, and then delivery. So it'll just print out the total, and then it'll loop again.
Awesome.
And the other one was this one, which stores like a bunch of like data, like a leaderboard or something. So let's say this one. And right now I only have it set to like 4 types. So if you type in something like electric that's not in my array, it'll print out this message, and it'll ask you again. So let's say higher. The special move doesn't matter. And the HP I set it between 1 and 999. So if I put like 1,000, print all this, and I can put 1. That's fine. Same thing with MP. I would put negative. It'll ask again. For this one, pull that, and then it adds it, and then you can keep adding it.
That's awesome. Do you think that there could be a situation where you used an object or a class in this project, maybe?
I'm not sure. I'm not up to, like, I only got to classes a while ago. like in
Mhm.
one of my courses. So I'm a little fuzzy on that, honestly.
Okay.
So I would probably have to look up how the concepts of classes and stuff like that.
We can do that right now if you want. If you have time, a couple minutes.
Okay.
Um, I'll just go below all this code, or actually go above all this code so we can use it. Right above the leaderboard,
Okay.
and type in class, and then we'll call it mock beast, and then place the two dots to signify that we're going to the next line. No, sorry, semicolon, not semicolon, the
The colon.
colon, yes. Okay,
Okay.
now we're gonna go below that, yep, and then we're gonna type in a def, which stands for
The function.
function, yep, and then we're gonna do the space, then 2 underscores, and then type INIT, and then do a parentheses, and then write self, and then do another colon after that,
Outside the parentheses.
outside the parentheses, yes.
Okay.
So this is the initializer. This basically gets run every time a class is built, right? So we'll just print the line for right now, saying new mock beast created. Okay.
Okay.
Now let's go above. Nothing's gonna change yet. Now go above the int.
The init.
Yeah.
So like line 17.
Right. Go. Put a space. Enter. Sorry. And then we're gonna create the fields that you're asking for here, right? Now you can delete all this code right after. I'm just trying to make you think about object-oriented programming because it's really important for programming in the future. So you don't have to edit your code. I just want to make you think a little abstractly right now. So let's think about all the fields that would be within a mock beast that you're asking for already. We can go from top to bottom. The first one you're asking for is a name, right? So
Yes.
let's put a name.
Any name.
Let's put name. Let's put the variable name, and then go underneath. You can set that to equal to an empty string for right now. Oh, empty string. Sorry.
Whoops.
Right. Yeah, and then type. We can do the same thing.
Is empty string as well.
Yeah. And then what's the next one? Special move.
Yeah, it's a smooth.
And HP, which will be a number. We can set that to 1 for right now. Yeah. So hypothetically, you'd be collecting all of this data, right? And then we would create a mock beast and print it out, right? And I know you're probably thinking to yourself, what's the difference between this and that? But then we could have a collection of all these different mock beast objects, and hypothetically, we could store multiple mock beasts at one time, and it wouldn't be confusing, you know? I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, I have an idea to
Yeah.
what you're trying to say.
So, I mean, this is a good way you built a program. You did an excellent job. You did a really, really good job. It's just when we're trying to build really large scale applications, we want to think of all our data types in like this sense, like as a reusable class. So maybe we can spend a little more time another day, maybe on the weekend or when you ever have some free time, maybe during spring break. I can show you how to use classes and objects a little bit more. or maybe I'll do a Saturday class for if everybody's interested. But you can just delete that code that we wrote, and you can run it again, and it'll be fine. I was just trying to explain to you how to use classes, and how we can turn this into a class. But you did a really good job, and I'm really, really proud of you. How many more weeks?
We just finished week 3. We just started JavaScript yesterday. Last week was like a full week of Python.
You're doing both.
Yeah. We are gonna have to cut out I think what's it called, SQL or something.
Okay. That's
So
cool.
I'm a little bummed out about that because I don't know what that is at all. And I
SQL
wanted
is
to
just
learn that.
like database accessing. It's not really programming languages. I would say definitely learning Python and JavaScript are probably more important. And once you get to the point where you can access databases, it becomes helpful. But for right now, you can. I'm gonna send you a link. There's something called APIs,
Mhm.
which they contain data for us, and then we can use it. We can use it, to our advantage. So here, I'm sending you an API right now. Let's pull up Zoom.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask about resume building.
Yeah. What specifically?
So I think I want this summer to do an internship
Mm-hmm.
in software engineer. Um, and I have to redo my resume because, like I mentioned, I'm doing the software engineering boot camp. So I
Yeah.
want to put that on there.
Well, here's the thing. To obtain software engineering and engineering internships, I would say the most important thing is to have projects.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I'm doing right now
and
with
then
the boot camp.
exactly, and then you want to go explain your process while working through the project in your resume, because you might not specifically have, like you might not have work experience that like will help you get the job, but if you have projects and you explain your work process and what you did and the technologies that you used, that's a really good way to land those jobs with no work experience.
Yeah, because I noticed it takes a long time to write in HTML and CSS. So I will probably look into
Oh,
Bootstrap more.
oh wait, to write a resume in HTML and CSS?
No, I meant like last time. Well, not last time. A few meetings ago, you showed us Bootstrap.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and at the time, I was doing HTML and CSS with the bootcamp.
Hmm.
But I did realize that it takes quite a while.
Yeah, it's just like extra work that I mean it's good on you, but like no one's gonna know the difference if you did it in Bootstrap or you did it in plain CSS.
Yeah.
So that's why I really suggest learning Bootstrap or just using Bootstrap is because it really speeds up the whole entire process. We can do a whole web page in pretty much an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, and it's not really where you want to spend the majority of your time. Like you would think. I mean, because Python and JavaScript are a lot more complex, so you want to spend more time learning those languages rather than doing more design-based stuff. Just because um, design is very limited without JavaScript. Actually, I want to show you guys a really cool website that I found that uses JavaScript in a really, really cool way. But that's where it really comes in handy to like, HTML will only get you so far without the JavaScript or the Python behind it to really take it to the next level. Let me just find it real quick. Here, I'm gonna send you a website real quick, Miriam. If you can open it up for me, it'd be great.
Okay.
So like this is like an example of like an out of the world, out of like a crazy, really, really good portfolio. Um, like I don't expect to do anything like this, but this is all done in JavaScript. Um, and like the HTML and CSS is very limited. You know, it's probably like all these buttons you can click on and stuff, but everything else is done in JavaScript. So that's why it's really important to just you know, learn the basics of HTML and CSS. Don't get too caught up on it, but also learn how to do really good JavaScript so that you can build crazy stuff. Yeah, I know it's a really, really crazy good portfolio. I think this game works as well too. Also, I think my friend said. Oh wow, I got stole my project. I have a project that's just like this. I'm doing NCAA.
He's using Python libraries.
Mhm.
I was using Blender.
Yeah, that's to create the model. Then he used Three.js to display it inside the browser. Let's see if I can find another one. Oh, this is another cool one that I found. I'll send to you right now. You might not want to run both these at the exact same time, though. It might make your graphics card do a little extra work. I just sent you another one, Mario, if you want to look at the chat. You might need to close the other one because it's a lot of rendering power.
I think I'm okay. Oops. Jesus, I'm not a good driver, so
Yeah. This is using Three.js. It's a JavaScript library for rendering 3D models. But that's why JavaScript is like really powerful nowadays. It's just like everybody's building packages for it, and it's a really cool.
how do I even access some of this stuff on the ground?
I think you gotta drive in. See, drive into those spots.
Okay, let's put it here. Okay.
That's GitHub. Wow, I'm gonna post it every day.
Oh, is this his course or something?
Yeah, that's his course. I think he's also one of the co-founders of the actual project.
Yeah. What is this?
This must be like a wine website that he did. It's a pretty cool rendering though.
Okay.
Yeah, this is also in 3JS. Oh, shoot. All right, guys, it's 1:30. I gotta hop off this call. I gotta go back to work. It was really good spending some